how do you think cities will change, the physical city? Because we all think about, okay, we're going to have these cities where loads of digital content and augmented content is layered on the physical world in a way that is entertaining and informative and so on. But do you think that the actual physical fabric of the cities will change too? Do you think we'll have less signage, and we'll have, that actually the digital content will almost kind of wash away a lot of the clutter of the physical urban environments?
I mean, potentially, yes. And this is where this is where I have to make my obvious reference to Keiichi Matsuda's hyper-reality short film from 2016, like still the iconic vision of this of Medellin. And the telling things in that dystopian vision, a horror film as he has described it, is when the presumed AR glasses that the protagonist is wearing from first person glitch out in a supermarket, and you see that, yeah, it's a completely grayed out environment. So number one, I worry about that in the sense of, yeah, the idea that physical, accessible signage, the equity issues, the availability to all disappear. I mean, that's a projection of all the worries we've had about smartphones for the last 10 years when it comes to moving services out of the physical world onto smartphones, because then it creates the issues of if you don't have a smartphone, you are now frozen out. So what happens when those issues migrate up the next level of the tech stack into AR or AI of some kind? So yeah, so you're right in the sense of, we could have an environment like Sao Paulo, which of course has famously banned outdoor signage for a very long time, and has great effects there on sort of visual pollution. But I do worry about the sort of equity issues. And then number two, I also think about the short-term solution too. If we don't get VPSs, and this is what I'm thinking about right now in writing my report, like, do we end up with mass amounts of QR codes everywhere because that's where you're going to activate local content? And this is something I'm thinking about for cities as part of this is like, we need signage. Like there's going to have to be new forms of signage to show that there is a digital experience here. And so, do you have a physical sign that is then mirrored in AR that is incorporated into all the VPSs where the stop sign is still a stop sign? So I've been thinking about like how the city environment changes or how the city projects itself into these layers. But I think your broader question about how the city changes is, that gets us into the realm really ultimately about sort of climate adaptation, where that goes. And so I think, there's great visions there about thinking about, how do we do adaptation for increasing heat? How do we basically build new forms of housing that have passive house ventilation built in and heat pumps? And we could talk a bit about that all day, but that's I think it's almost a whole separate trajectory. And it's very interesting where that climate adaptation matches up with AR, AI, or what I've started calling AIR for artificially intelligent reality, in the sense of, yeah, can AI lead to better effects when it comes to resource consumption and optimization and efficiency of operations, as we've been talking about for well over a decade with smart cities, that outstrips the incredible energy usage that we see right now with AI. So I'm very curious about whether, is there some sort of paradigm of technological abundance where we have, incredible amounts of renewable electricity that fuels these AI cores that then allows us to basically, yeah, strip out physical signage, reduce our reliance on physical investments in cities, and move that all up into digital layers that are intuitive, that are lightweight, that are accessible to others, et cetera. Yeah, very, very solar punk when I start to think about it.
It's just in the last 12 months, it's incredible how, AI obviously in the last 12 months has accelerated massively, but also, you know, smart glasses, which everyone has always seen as very much an augmented reality device, have first and foremost really become an artificial intelligence device. You know, that actually, and this is probably as much to do with the physics and the difficulties of doing AR in a smart glass, and that this is a stepping stone that, actually it's far easier to start to interpret the world around you and then to be able to, interact with the user. But AI definitely feels, and I think your air kind of mnemonic is really interesting. It feels that AI and AR are increasingly kind of melding together into what I just think of as the future of digital. Something that's going to replace the smartphone. It is that kind of coming together of AI and AR, in my opinion, because it just becomes I believe, more human, actually, ironically, a more real way of interacting with the world around us, rather than being kind of tethered to this flat two-dimensional, screen that we carry around in our pocket. Do you feel kind of positively around how we as humans are going to interact with digital content in the future through that lens? Pardon the pun.
So many questions there that I've worked on, and this is where I've done some actually projects for the U.S. Secret Service and for NATO on AI misinformation and weaponization. So I can do some really dark futures in a moment there. But yeah, there's a couple different paradigms of how this could play out there, to your point about, again, moving away from screens. So number one, it's been very interesting to see the initial wave of AI hardware devices like Humane, which I think fits and definitely part of AIR, but also in the sort of AR spectrum. The idea of having projection of light onto your hands and this idea of having a sort of visual overlay combined with AI totally has met with negative reviews, let's just say. And then
I
also
think
the
there's a lot
rabbit.
about it that's great. I think a lot about it, but the whole kind of, hey, we haven't got a screen, but we're going to project something a bit pony on you, which means crap, on your hand is to try and get around that. It's like, really? That kind of just feels like it undermined how cool everything else was. But anyway,
Well, that and then you had the AI, then you had the rabbit, which is the idea there. And I think there's one voice and there's others, but this idea of of having an AI agent model as a total UX, like let's like have a complete UX where you can just basically ask an AI agent in its early form to do something. I think the failure of those devices has frankly less to do with the hardware form factor than like AI agents have not been fully realized. There's papers, we sort of see where that's going. And like that stuff's going to get very weird very fast. I saw someone, for example, has launched a microservice called Payment, where it's basically where your AI agent can access bank accounts to go hire people. This is something I've been thinking about for 10 years when Tim Wong, the famous internet prankster, was proposing something similar as well, of actually having AI bots that could plan parties and do things like this. So watching AI start to intervene in the real world through various mechanisms is going to be really fascinating. So that's the agent piece. The second piece is this idea of screenless cities, and this is Hubert Baroche is working with my Cornell Tech colleague Anthony Townsend on this. And so this is the idea of like, are there forms of embodied AI that are very light touch, no screens, no AR, nothing like that at all. And that's a sort of Mark Weiser embedded computing kind of thing like this that goes back to the 80s of like ambient computing, where it's light and it's subtle and doesn't take us out of our present. And I'd like to see if that could happen, but I'm not sure that genie goes back in the bottle. And then the version that I'm most interested in is that I like to say that AI is the killer app of AR and vice versa. Like, when you have AI agents, it's going to be very unsatisfying to talk to them through a chatbot interface, but like embody them in AR, and now we're talking. And this idea, and this is Keiichi did a great short film called Agents. He built one called Wool with Niantic and InWorld. And I think this is going to be a fascinating new vector here of this idea of like that we could live in an enchanted world where we watch agents skidding around doing their business. It was sort of a spirit world. And this is Keiichi's idea of borrowing from Japanese Shintoism, that like a world that is populated with little gods that have their own functions and things. Fascinating to imagine how that plays out. But I do